Have you ever wondered why a massive pit in the middle of the desert has been burning for over 50 years? Is it a cursed gateway to the underworld, as legends claim, or is there a scientific explanation behind this fiery mystery? Today, we'll uncover the myths, the science, and the secrets that keep the door to hell blazing and the world fascinated. Welcome back, history and mystery lovers. Today, we're traveling to Turkmenistan's Karakum Desert, home to a place so surreal it's been called the door to hell. This blazing crater has become the center of countless myths, scientific investigations, and even tourist curiosity. But what truly lies beneath the flames? Stick with us as we separate fact from fiction and finally answer the burning question, literally, of why this fire has raged for decades. Imagine the year is 1971. We're in the vast, empty expanse of Turkmenistan's Karakum Desert, a place so remote and silent that the wind itself sounds like a whisper from another world. A team of Soviet geologists arrives, eager to explore what they believe could be a promising site for oil and natural gas extraction. Back then, the Soviet Union was heavily invested in energy projects, scouring every corner of its vast territory for resources to power industries and cities. What they didn't know was that they were about to create one of the most mysterious and terrifying landmarks on the planet. The site looked ordinary at first, just a stretch of arid land beneath the blazing sun. But beneath the surface was something no one fully understood. Massive pockets of natural gas trapped within unstable layers of earth. As the Soviet drilling rigs went to work, the ground suddenly gave way with a deafening roar. The earth opened up like the mouth of some ancient beast, swallowing the drilling equipment and forming a giant crater nearly 70 meters wide and 20 meters deep. The team quickly realized this was no ordinary accident. Toxic methane gas began leaking from the pit, spreading across the desert air. Methane is invisible, odorless, and extremely dangerous. The Soviets faced a serious dilemma. If the gas kept leaking, it could harm nearby villages, poison wildlife, or even cause deadly explosions if it reached populated areas. They had to act fast and they had to act decisively. And this is where things took an even stranger turn. The geologists came up with a bold plan. If the gas was leaking uncontrollably, why not set it on fire? Their reasoning was that the flames would burn off the methane quickly, probably within a few days or at most a few weeks. It was a calculated risk, but one they believed was necessary to protect the environment and local communities. So, the scientists lit the crater on fire. What happened next is the stuff of legend. Instead of burning out in days or weeks, the fire raged on and on and on. The flames devoured the methane gas with an unrelenting hunger, turning the crater into a blazing inferno that lit up the night sky for miles around. Locals began whispering about a gateway to the underworld, a literal door to hell that had been opened by human hands. What was supposed to be a quick fix became a problem no one could solve. As the years passed, the fire never stopped. It survived rainstorms, brutal desert winds, freezing winters, and scorching summers. Scientists later discovered that the natural gas reserves beneath the crater were far larger than anyone had estimated in 1971. Instead of running out, the methane kept feeding the flames, turning the pit into a permanent, burning wound in the Earth's surface. The Soviet Union eventually collapsed in 1991, but the door to hell kept burning, an eternal reminder of that fateful day 2 decades earlier. When Turkmenistan became independent, the new government inherited not only the land and resources of the country, but also this bizarre, unintentional landmark in the middle of nowhere. For years, there was little information about the site. Officials rarely spoke about it, and scientists conducted only limited studies. It was as if the crater existed in a world of its own, ignored by the people who had created it and feared by those who lived nearby. And yet, despite its eerie reputation, the door to hell began attracting attention from outsiders. Explorers, journalists, and later, tourists were drawn to the surreal spectacle of flames roaring out of the earth day and night. In the middle of the desert, where darkness stretches endlessly in every direction, the glow of the burning crater could be seen from miles away, like a beacon calling out to anyone curious enough to come closer. Over time, the origin story of the door to hell took on a life of its own. Some claimed the Soviets had been drilling for oil, others said it was natural gas from the start. There were even rumors that secret military experiments had gone wrong, causing the explosion. With few official records available, the line between fact and myth began to blur. What everyone agreed on, however, was that a single moment in 1971 had created something extraordinary, a place where science, accident, and nature collided in the most dramatic way possible. As the flames of the door to hell continued to rage year after year, the story of this fiery pit began to take on a life far beyond science and geology. For the local communities living in the Karakum Desert, this wasn't just an industrial accident or a failed Soviet energy project. Became something far more mysterious, something almost supernatural. When the sun set and the desert turned dark and silent, the glow from the crater looked like the very earth itself was on fire from deep within. The flames leapt into the night sky like angry spirits casting flickering shadows across the sand dunes, and for those who lived near this inferno, it was impossible not to wonder if something far older and darker was at work here. People began calling it the door to hell not long after the crater was lit. The name spread quickly through villages and towns, and it carried with it a sense of fear and reverence. To some, this was no ordinary fire. It was a punishment, a warning, a hole in the world where the forces of the underworld breathed their fury onto the earth as surface. In many cultures, fire has long been associated with the divine or the demonic, with purification or damnation, and here was a place where the fire never died, no matter what humans tried to do. Elders told stories to children around campfires, speaking in hushed tones about what might dwell beneath the desert sands. Some believed the crater marked the spot where ancient spirits had been trapped by forces beyond human understanding, angry at being disturbed when the drilling rigs pierced the earth above them. Others said the Soviets had unknowingly opened a gateway to another realm, a place where the underworld met the living world, and once opened, it could never be closed. As the story of the door to hell traveled beyond Turkmenistan, it began to blend with older legends from different parts of the world. In Persian mythology, which has deep roots in Central Asia, fire often represented divine power and was sometimes seen as a barrier between the human and the demonic. Some people began to connect the crater to these ancient tales, suggesting that perhaps this was a sign from the gods, a reminder that human ambition had limits and that the natural world could still unleash forces far beyond our control. Travelers who came to see the crater in its early years often left with stories that added more layers to the mystery. Some claimed they heard strange noises coming from the pit at night, a low, eerie rumble beneath the roar of the flames, like something alive was moving deep within the earth. Others spoke of the heat feeling different from ordinary fire, as if it carried with it a presence, a weight. That made people step back instinctively, even when they were standing a safe distance away. In the absence of clear information about what had really happened in 1971, rumors flourished. There were whispers that the Soviets themselves had called it the door to hell after workers reported terrifying dreams and sleepless nights while camping near the crater. Some said the scientists left the site quickly after lighting the fire, shaken by what they had unleashed, never to return for decades. With so few official records available, these tales spread like wildfire, and the mystery only deepened with time. The myths even began to attract adventurers, filmmakers, and paranormal enthusiasts from around the world. For them, the crater wasn't just a scientific curiosity. It was a place where human history, ancient mythology, and unexplained phenomena seemed to collide. Some came looking for answers, others for thrill, but many left with the same uneasy feeling that the door to hell was more than just an accident frozen in time. And as the decades passed, the legends kept growing. Stories began appearing online about people who claimed to have camped near the crater and experienced strange dreams, as if the fire reached not only into the earth but into the human mind itself. Some spoke of seeing shapes in the flames, figures that appeared for only a moment before vanishing into the smoke and heat. Scientists dismissed these accounts as tricks of the light or the result of staring into fire for too long, but for many these explanations only added to the sense that something was being hidden that the crater had secrets science couldn't fully explain. Even the name itself, the door to hell, carried a weight that drew people in. It wasn't just a descriptive label. It felt like a warning, a title given by those who sensed there was more here than geology and gas, a place where human ambition had collided with the unknown, where fire had consumed technology and left behind something primal and untamed. A reminder that the Earth still held places where myths could be born in the modern age, places where the old stories about gods, demons, and the underworld didn't feel so far away after all. For decades, the myths and legends surrounding the door to hell have fascinated travelers, storytellers, and even thrill seekers. But behind the whispers of curses and gateways to the underworld lies a story grounded in science, one that begins deep below the desert sands, where forces far older than humanity itself have been shaping the Earth for millions of years. To truly understand the door to hell, we need to leave the world of myth for a moment and step into the realm of geology, chemistry, and physics. Because the fire that has been burning for over half a century isn't fueled by magic or ancient wrath, as fueled by the raw, untamed power of natural gas. Turkmenistan sits atop one of the largest natural gas reserves in the world. Beneath its deserts lies a vast network of porous rocks and underground pockets where methane and other gases have accumulated over geological time. This region, known as the Karakum Desert, is not just empty sand stretching to the horizon. It's the surface layer of a colossal energy reservoir. When the Soviet geologists began drilling in 1971, they were tapping into a pressurized system they didn't fully understand. The earth beneath them was like a balloon filled with invisible, flammable gas waiting for the slightest disturbance to escape. When the drilling rig collapsed and the crater formed, methane began leaking freely into the air. This was a serious problem because methane isn't just explosive. It's also a potent greenhouse gas. In high concentrations, it can displace oxygen, suffocating animals or even people without them realizing what's happening. The decision to ignite the crater wasn't as reckless as it might sound today. At the time, scientists believed the gas supply would burn off quickly, solving the environmental risk and making the area safe again. What they didn't know was that the reserves feeding the flames were massive, far larger than anyone had estimated, possibly connected to deeper layers that have kept the fire alive ever since. Methane itself is a fascinating substance. It's the simplest hydrocarbon, just one carbon atom bonded to 4 hydrogen atoms, and yet it holds enormous energy in its chemical bonds. When methane burns, it reacts with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide, water vapor, and a tremendous amount of heat. That's the heat you see roaring out of the door to hell, heat so intense that it warps the air above the crater and makes standing too close feel like stepping into an oven. The blue and orange flames dancing on the crater floor are the visible part of a reaction happening billions of times per second as methane molecules break apart and recombine into new forms, releasing energy in the process. Over the years, scientists have studied the crater to understand why it continues to burn so relentlessly. Some believe there's a constant flow of methane from deeper underground layers, feeding the fire like a hidden pipeline that never runs dry. Others suggest that while the initial reservoir may have been finite, it was simply far larger than anyone imagined, and the rate of burning isn't nearly enough to exhaust it quickly. Either way, the door to hell has become a unique natural laboratory for studying not only geology, but also the chemistry of combustion and the behavior of gases escaping from the Earth. There's also the question of how stable the crater itself really is. The walls of the pit are made of crumbling rock and sand baked hard by decades of heat. Some researchers worry that the crater could expand over time as the edges collapse inward, exposing even more gas pockets and potentially changing the shape and size of the burning pit. This makes approaching the site risky. The ground near the edge can be unstable, and the intense heat combined with toxic fumes creates conditions that are anything but forgiving for humans. Another scientific mystery involves the ecosystem that has begun to appear around the crater. Yes, life has found a way even here. Microbiologists have discovered heat-loving microorganisms, or extremophiles, living in the soil at the edge of the crater. These microbes thrive in temperatures and chemical environments that would kill most organisms, making them similar to the kinds of life forms scientists think might exist on other planets or moons with extreme conditions. Studying them could provide clues about how life survives in hostile environments and even guide the search for extraterrestrial life in our solar system. Despite decades of observation, one thing remains clear: the door to hell is both a man-made disaster and a natural wonder, a place where human error collided with geological reality to create something that defies easy explanations. The science behind it tells a story of pressure, gas, fire, and chemistry, but it also reminds us how little control we sometimes have over the forces beneath our feet. Here in the Karakum Desert, science explains the how and the why, but it doesn't take away the awe of standing before a pit of eternal fire, knowing it was born from a single accident and has been burning ever since as the decades passed. The door to hell transformed from a Soviet-era mistake into something far bigger than the scientists or the government ever imagined. What began as a burning pit in the middle of an empty desert slowly became one of the most famous landmarks in all of Central Asia. People who had never even heard of Turkmenistan suddenly knew about this mysterious flaming crater that had been burning for years without stopping. And with that global curiosity came an entirely new chapter in the story: how a fiery accident became a magnet for adventurers, travelers, and even thrill seekers from across the world. At first, there was nothing around the door to hell: no paved roads, no visitor centers, not even a sign. It sat in the middle of the Karakum Desert like a secret only the locals knew about. But as word spread through news reports and eventually across the internet, people began to make the long journey to see it for themselves. The first images shared online left viewers stunned: an enormous, glowing pit in the ground, surrounded by nothing but sand and sky, with flames shooting up into the air like the earth itself was on fire. For many, it looked like something out of a movie, too surreal to be real. Travelers described the experience as otherworldly. By day, the crater was impressive, a vast hole in the desert with heat shimmering above the flames. But at night, it turned into something truly unforgettable. The sky over the desert filled with stars, and in the middle of that silent, endless darkness, the crater glowed like a living thing, its light flickering across the dunes for miles around. Visitors would camp near the crater, feeling the heat on their faces as they stared into the fire, listening to the constant roar of the flames. Some said it felt like standing at the edge of the world. Others said it felt like staring straight into the heart of the planet itself. The door to hell also became a favorite subject for photographers and filmmakers. Images of the crater began appearing in magazines, documentaries, and travel blogs, each one capturing its strange beauty in a different way. Drone footage revealed the full scale of the site, showing the perfect circle of fire in the middle of the barren desert, like a wound glowing against the earth's skin. Adventurers described the long journey across the Karakum Desert as part of the experience, with the crater waiting at the end like a reward for those willing to reach it. In 2013, the site gained even more attention when Canadian explorer George Karounis descended into the crater for a National Geographic expedition. Wearing a heat-resistant suit and protected by ropes, he became the first person to reach the bottom of the burning pit. His goal was to collect soil samples to study the extreme environment inside the crater, hoping to find microorganisms that had adapted to the intense heat and toxic conditions. The images of him standing in the middle of the inferno, surrounded by towering walls of fire, captured the imagination of people around the world. It was like watching someone explore another planet. Tourism around the crater grew slowly but steadily. Travelers from Europe, Asia, and even the Americas began adding the door to hell to their bucket lists, calling it one of the most unusual destinations on Earth. Some came for the science, some for the adventure, and some simply because they wanted to see something truly unique before it disappeared. Despite the government of Turkmenistan occasionally announcing plans to extinguish the flames for environmental and safety reasons, the crater has continued to burn, drawing visitors year after year. Local tour companies began offering trips into the desert, complete with camping equipment and guides who shared the history and legends of the site. For many visitors, spending the night near the door to hell became a rite of passage. They would sit around campfires on the edge of the desert, staring at the glow of the crater in the distance, swapping stories just like the locals had done for decades. The site became a place where science, history, myth, and modern tourism all came together in one surreal experience. Even the name itself helped fuel its popularity. The Door to Hell wasn't an official name given by scientists or governments. It was born out of local legends and popular imagination, but it was catchy, dramatic, and unforgettable. For travelers scrolling through social media or watching travel documentaries, the name alone was enough to spark curiosity. It sounded like the title of an adventure film, something dangerous and mysterious, something you had to see with your own eyes to believe. In many ways, the Door to Hell became a symbol of human fascination with the unknown. People didn't just come to look at a burning hole in the ground. They came to feel small standing next to something that had been raging for decades. Something created by accident but sustained by forces deep within the earth. It reminded visitors of the planet's raw power, of the thin line between human ambition and nature's unpredictability, and of the mysteries that still exist in a world where we think everything has already been mapped, photographed, and explained. Even after decades of burning, the Door to Hell refuses to give up its secrets completely. Scientists, governments, and adventurers have all tried to understand it, tame it, or even stop it. But the crater keeps burning on its own terms, ignoring human deadlines and defying expectations. What began as a Soviet accident in the middle of the Karakoram Desert has turned into one of the world's most enduring mysteries, and to this day questions remain about why it still burns, how long it will last, and what its ultimate fate will be. Over the years, researchers have made multiple attempts to study the crater in detail. Some expeditions focused on the geology beneath it, trying to map the underground layers of rock and gas that continue feeding the fire. Others studied the air quality, measuring the emissions rising from the flames to understand how much methane and other gases are being released into the atmosphere. There are even studies exploring whether the site could be a source of extremophile microbes, tiny organisms that survive in the harshest conditions on Earth and might hold clues about how life could exist on other planets with toxic or high-temperature environments. Yet despite all this research, the full picture remains incomplete, as if the Door to Hell itself guards its secrets from anyone who tries to solve them too quickly. One of the biggest ongoing debates concerns the possibility of extinguishing the fire once and for all. Over the years, the government of Turkmenistan has made several announcements about plans to close the crater, citing environmental concerns and potential risks to nearby communities. In 2022, the country's president even publicly ordered scientists and officials to find a way to put out the flames, saying that the fire not only affects the environment but also wastes valuable natural gas that could otherwise be used to power homes and industries. The order reignited global attention, with many wondering whether the decades-long fire would finally come to an end. But putting out the Door to Hell isn't as simple as it sounds. The crater isn't like a campfire that can be smothered with dirt or water. The flames are fueled by vast underground reserves of natural gas, and no one knows exactly how deep or extensive those reserves are. Some scientists worry that trying to seal the crater could cause unexpected explosions if the gas builds up pressure beneath the surface. Others argue that filling the pit with soil or concrete might not stop the gas leaks, allowing new fissures to open nearby and possibly creating even bigger problems in the long run. So far, no one has found a practical, safe, and effective way to silence the flames without risking something worse. In the meantime, the Door to Hell has taken on a strange role as both a scientific puzzle and a cultural icon. For the people of Turkmenistan, it's become part of the country's identity, appearing in documentaries, travel shows, and countless photographs shared around the world. Tourists still arrive to stand at the edge of the crater, staring into its fiery depths and wondering how long it will keep burning. Some even argue that shutting it down would erase a unique piece of history and a rare natural wonder that draws attention to a country many people couldn't even find on a map before hearing about the crater. And then there are the lingering mysteries that science hasn't fully answered. How deep do the gas reserves beneath the crater really go? Could the fire suddenly die out on its own one day, or will it keep burning for decades or even centuries to come? Are there undiscovered ecosystems of heat-loving microbes thriving inside the pit, hidden from the rest of the world by the flames above? Could the site hold lessons for understanding similar environments on other planets, where life might survive in conditions we once thought impossible? The door to hell sits at the crossroads of all these questions, a place where history, science, and myth continue to collide. It reminds us that human beings, for all our technology and ambition, are sometimes at the mercy of forces far larger and older than ourselves. Governments can plan, scientists can study, and travelers can marvel, but the fire doesn't seem to care about politics, research goals, or tourist photos. It just keeps burning as if it exists on its own timeline, far beyond human schedules or expectations, and so the debate continues. Will the door to hell be extinguished one day, finally closing this accidental chapter of history? Or will it keep burning far into the future, defying scientists, governments, and adventurers alike, refusing to be tamed no matter how many plans or promises are made about its fate? And so after traveling through its history, unraveling the myths, diving into the science, exploring the fascination it inspires, and pondering its uncertain future, the door to hell stands before us as far more than just a burning crater in the desert. It is a living contradiction, an accident of human ambition that became a monument to nature's power, a place where science explains the how but not always the why, and where myths rise from the flames just as easily as the heat itself. For over 50 years, it has burned without pause, surviving storms, winters, and political changes, a flame that no one has been able to silence. It draws scientists seeking answers, adventurers chasing adrenaline, and travelers who simply want to stand at the edge of something that feels bigger than themselves. It is a place where the ancient and the modern collide, where local legends of gateways to the underworld meet cutting-edge research on geology, chemistry, and even the possibility of life in extreme environments. Perhaps that's why the door to hell continues to captivate the world. It isn't just about fire and gas trapped beneath the earth. It's about what it represents, a reminder that, even in the 21st century, there are still mysteries we can't fully solve, forces we can't completely control, and stories that refuse to end neatly the way we want them to. Whether the flames are finally extinguished one day or whether they keep burning for generations, the door to hell has already earned its place in history. It began as an accident, but it became a legend, one that will keep drawing people into its story for as long as the fire continues to glow against the desert night.